Hello. It is good to see you. I don't see you because I'm not here, but you see me. Anyway, you're going to watch a little video now because I'm home with my sick kid today on pages 80 through 100 of Fahrenheit 451. So I got a couple questions that I'm going to have the substitute pass out to you that I'd like you to answer as you watch the video, which you'll turn in at the end. And then you'll read up to page 120 for Monday. So Montag has gone to visit Faber, right? And Faber, as a reminder, was the professor that he talked to one day several years earlier. And he met him on a park bench, and he felt like this guy was, more than he said he was. And he felt like he had some either knowledge of books or understanding of books. So he's going to talk to Faber because this is shortly after he, had started reading books and is starting to question lots of things. And he felt like Faber might be somebody he could talk to. So when he shows up at Faber's house, he carries a Bible with him. And until Faber lets him in, he starts to get angry with the Bible. But eventually he lets Montag in and he starts to talk to Montag. And on the very bottom of page 81 and top of 82, it said that he used to read a lot, right? And he saw what was happening. It said, Lord, there were a lot of lovely books once before we let them go. Faber turned the pages. Mr. Montag, you're looking at a coward. I saw the way things were going a long time back. I said nothing. I'm one of the innocents who could have spoken up and out when no one would listen to the guilty, but I did not speak and thus became guilty myself. He was too scared to say anything, and he didn't think anything would end up coming from this, and so as a result of that, now he blames himself and counts himself among the people who ended up getting books banned for the society. He then goes on to talk about why books are important. Okay, so on page 83, number 1, the first reason, do you know why books such as this are important? Because they have quality. What does the word quality mean? To me, it means texture. It has pores. It has features. The book can go under the microscope. You'd find life under the glass streaming past in infinite profusion. The more pores, the more truthfully recorded details of life per square inch you can get on a sheet of paper, the more literary you are. That's my definition anyway. Telling detail, fresh detail. Now, what I want you to do is think of the most attractive celebrity you can think of. Go ahead. You don't need to shout it out, but just think about it. Now, when you see that person in a movie or on TV or in a magazine, they look flawless, right? Partially it's because of makeup, partially it's because of the camera and effects and things. But if you were to take a magnifying glass and walk up to the most attractive celebrity you could think of and put it right up next to their cheek and look at them, you'd probably end up with a restraining order, but you'd see all kinds of imperfections, all kinds of pores and hairs and blemishes and all kinds of things, right? And what books do is they show you those blemishes on life. It's like giving yourself a magnifying glass to look at things in life a little bit more closely. It says, so now do you see why books are hated and feared? They show the pores in the faces of life. And people don't want to sometimes see those. They prefer our celebrities to look beautiful and flawless. Going on to page 84, reason number 2 that books are important that we need is, second thing we need, leisure. So you need good information, and then you need time to think about it and time to digest it. We got plenty of off hours, Montag says. Off hours, yes, but time to think, said Faber. If you're not driving at 100 miles an hour at a clip where you can't think of anything else but the danger, then you're playing some game or sitting in some room where you can't argue with the four-wall televisor. Why? Televisor's real. It's immediate. It has dimension. It tells you what to think and blasts it in. It must be right. It seems so right. So that's thing number 2. We have a lot of time off, but we don't have time where we get to think, right? We're either on our phones, or we're going online, or we're playing video games, or we're watching TV, or things that we don't require a lot of effort or thought on your part. My part too. And then, thing number 3, reason number 3, number 1, as I said, is quality of information. 2, the leisure to digest it. And then 3, the right to carry out actions based on what we learned from the interaction of the first 2. So, you need good information for your brain to kick around. You need time to kick that around and think about it. And then you need to be able to make choices based on what you've learned from your reading and then your thinking. Going on. Montag said, I can get books. You're running a risk. That's the good part of dying, said Montag. When you've nothing to lose, you run any risk you want. There, you've said an interesting thing, laughed Faber, without having read it. Now, his plan that Montague kind of casually tosses out and Faber takes forward a little bit is what they're going to do is print more books and plant books in the homes of the firemen, right? And then they call in the alarm. The fire department shows up at the homes of all the people who are supposed to be preventing other people from reading books, find out that they have books, and then this whole process starts to look wrong, right? If the ones who are paid to enforce these laws are the ones breaking them, then it makes it look like they're trying to keep everything from anybody else. But it's a risky plan. It's not a great one. Okay, now go to page 86. We go forward a little bit. And he said, Montague said, if I thought it would help be a plan worth trying, I'd have to take your word it would help. Now it says, you can't guarantee things like that. After all, when we had all the books we needed, we still insisted on finding the highest cliff to jump off. But we do need a breather. We do need knowledge, and perhaps in 1,000 years we might pick 1,000 cliffs to jump off. The books are there to remind us what asses and fools we are. There's Caesar's Praetorian Guard whispering as the parade roars down the avenue, remember, Caesar, thou art mortal. Now, what that means, so first of all, Julius Caesar was a very arrogant leader, right? And he was warned by his friends not to be too arrogant, and he ends up getting killed by all his friends, right? What that means for you, when you read books, you see mistakes people made. You see mistakes people made based on pride. You see mistakes based on faulty information. You see mistakes based on jealousy or lust or all kinds of things, right? And they show you what can happen to people and what it's like to be in those situations, to experience things that you haven't experienced before. And I think that is very important. Going on, now on page 87, he goes on and says, the whole culture shot through. The skeleton needs melting and reshaping. Good God, it isn't as simple as just picking up a book you laid down half a century ago. Remember, the firemen are rarely necessary. The public stop reading on its own accord. This is really big. This isn't a government idea from the society. People stopped wanting to read. The government later saw advantage in that, right, and kind of made it into the law, which worked to their advantage, because if you're a leader and you have a completely uninformed or misinformed public, you can do whatever you want. Okay, going on. Then he talks about how newspapers die off. Going forward. And then Faber gives Montague a little invention that he did, right? Faber used to be a professor and he used to be very active. But after books became illegal, he kind of, not literally went underground, but figuratively went underground and started to invent. He played the stock market. And he also invented this little kind of two-way radio piece. So Montague puts it in his ear, and Faber at his home can hear what Montague's hearing, right? So when Montague talks to Beatty, the fire chief, who is very smart and tries to confuse Montague regularly with lots of quotes from various books and various things and show how all these ideas contradict each other, Faber can hear what Beatty is saying, and then he can talk to Montague and help Montague both understand it and have something to say. Okay, now going on, Montague comes home, and he finds Mildred sitting around with all her friends, and they're watching TV. Okay, we were talking satire and irony over the last several days, and there's a lot of irony here. In a world where everyone's supposed to be happy, this is how they start to act and treat each other. So on the top of 95, so they're talking about going to war, and on 94 it said, oh, they come and go, Mrs. Phelps said. In again and out again, Finnegan. The Army called Pete yesterday. He'll be back next week. Army said so. Quick war, 48 hours, they said. Everyone home. That's what the Army said. Quick war. Pete called yesterday and said they'd be back next week. Quick. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. But if you have no idea of anything, you will believe anything you're told, right? Now, on bottom of 94, it said, I've heard that too. I've never known any dead men killed in the war. Killed jumping off buildings, yes, like Gloria's husband last week, but from wars, no. No, not from wars, said Mrs. Phelps. Anyway, Pete and I always said, no tears, nothing like that. It's our third marriage each, and we're independent. Be independent, we always said. He said, if I get killed off, you just go right ahead and don't cry, but get married again. Don't think of me. That reminds me, said Mildred. Did you see that Clara Dove 5-minute romance last night in your wall? Well, it's about a woman who... So, notice several things here. One, in a society where everyone's set up to be happy, they only focus on themselves, right? And so much so that this husband and wife basically just said to each other, if I die, don't worry, don't cry, don't be sad, just go get married and be happy again, right? And now, again, with that irony stuff, if you were sitting there and heard that, you heard someone, yeah, I just got married for the third time. If they die, it's all right, I'll get married again. If I die, it's no biggie, they'll get married again. You would look at them shocked, right? And Mildred cares even less. So Mildred is not shocked at all. She just thinks this reminds her of a TV show she watched, her 5-minute mysteries, her 5-minute romance. Now, Montag has had enough of this, right? He sees these women, and they're not paying attention to the war, and they're not worried about their husbands, and they're not worried about anything that's going to happen to them. And so then they start talking about kids, right? On the top of 96, let's talk. The woman jerked and stared. How are your children, Mrs. Phelps, he asked. You know I haven't any. No one in their right mind, the good Lord knows, would have any children. I wouldn't say that, said Mrs. Bowles. I've had 2 children by cesarean section. No use going through all that agony just for a baby. The world must reproduce, you know, the race must go on. Besides, they are sometimes they look just like you, and that's nice. 2 cesareans turn the trick. Yes, sir. Oh, my doctor said. Cesareans aren't necessary. Thank you so much. Cesareans aren't necessary. Okay, back. Sorry, I had a quick delivery. Cesarean, you've got to have the hips for it, everyone insisted, but I insisted. Okay, then Mrs. Bowles said, I plunk my children in school 9 days out of 10. I put up with them when they come home 3 days a month. It's not that bad at all. You heave them into the parlor, turn on the switch. It's like washing clothes. Stuff laundry in and slam the lid. Mrs. Bowles tittered. They'd just as soon kick me as kiss me. Thank God I can kick back. Now, when she talks about kids are at school all the time, and then when they come home, she just puts them in front of the TV. As a parent with 2 young kids, the temptation to do that is great. Right? Because it's really easy to just put your kids in front of TV or video game and they zone out and you zone out, and it's very little work for everybody. But you do too much video and TV and you end up not doing very well at many other things. Okay? Now, lastly, we get 2 more quick things. We get a discussion about politics at the bottom. Mildred sat in a moment, and this is the bottom of 96. Seeing that Montag was still in the doorway, clapped her hands. Let's talk politics, to please Guy. Sounds fine, said Mrs. Bowles. I voted last election, same as everyone. I laid it on the line for President Noble. I think he's one of the nicest-looking men ever became president. Oh, but the man they ran against him. He wasn't much, was he? Kind of small and homely, didn't shave too close or comb his hair very well. What possessed the outs to run him? You just don't go running a short little man like that against a tall man. Besides, he mumbled. Half the time I couldn't understand a word he said. And the words I did hear, I didn't understand. Fat, too, and didn't dress to hide it. No wonder the landslide was for Winston Noble. Even compare their name. Even their names helped. Compare Winston Noble and Hubert Hoag for 2 seconds, and you can almost figure out the results. Damn it, cried Montag. What do you know about Hoag and Noble? Well, they were right in the parlor wall. Not 6 months ago. One was always picking his nose. It drove me wild. If you notice, the way these people are picking their political leaders has nothing to do with whether they're smart people, or whether they're talented, or whether they have good ideas, because these people would have no idea about that. They don't follow the news, they don't pay attention, and so they don't know these things. And so then the choices they're making are based on much easier things to understand that you don't need to think about. How attractive they are, what their name sounds like, do they mumble, how tall they are, right? Which is kind of scary, but we'll see. Going on, then Montag, in a very reckless, stupid decision, decides to kind of stir people up, right? And so he says that he wants to read them a poem. Faber is freaking out at this point, remember, because Faber gave Montag the earpiece so he could hear what Montag was saying and hearing, and he hears this, and he knows that as soon as something bad like this happens, this is a dumb choice, some of those women are going to get very upset with that and might have problems with it and maybe call some authorities. And eventually it could get traced back to him. So Faber's pretty upset about that. Fly stirred its wings softly in his ear. Read. What's the title, dear? Dover Beach. Now, these women had just talked about it's going to be a quick war, over real quickly, everyone home, no casualties, nothing like that. And Montag reads, this is a longer poem, and it ends with, the chairs creaked under the 3 women. Montag finished it out. Ah, love, let us be true to one another. For the world, which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And here we are, as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, while ignorant armies clash by night. Let me just repeat that. For these women who say, quick war, over in 48 hours, no casualties, he said, there really is no joy. There is no love, no light, nothing to be certain of, and no peace. And we are stuck, and we are in this middle of this fight with ignorant armies clashing by night. That's a little bit heavier than quick war going to be over in 48 hours. And Mrs. Phelps was crying. The others in the middle of the desert watched her crying grow very loud as her face squeezed itself out with shape. They sat, not touching her, bewildered by her display. She sobbed uncontrollably. because she was moved by the poem, and it made her think about things she doesn't want to. But I think that's good, because sometimes I think people talking about important things in life in a fictional way about people who have never lived can explain to real readers what life is like, maybe more than real people who have lived. I think sometimes fiction can be more true than nonfiction, and we can really get at some things that are important in life. So that is all for today. So up to 120 for Monday. Thank you for your attention. I will see you then.